Oh, having trouble with my computer. That's not good. Anyway, attributions are when you attribute the quote to someone. Typically, you want to start with the quotation and then add attribution. If it's a long quote, in the middle. If it's a shorter quote, at the end of the quote. All right. The next one is before attribution, which is right the very next one. And this is where you use a comma instead of a period at the end of the quote. And so they give you an example, rub my shoulders, comma, even though that's a sentence, because you still need the attribution. You're not finished yet. So then you add the attribution, Miss Cawley suggested, and then the period goes there. You don't use a comma if the sentence ends in a question or an exclamation point. Okay, there'll be more about that in a chapter that you're going to be looking at over the weekend. All right, what's next on our little list? Moving right along. Names of states and nations used within city names. We've already talked about this. When you use a city and a state together, you have to put a comma after the state also, always. And don't forget that states are abbreviated, and there's a list of that in your style book. The next one is placement with quotes, and it's one sentence. Commas always go inside quotation marks. I will say that again. Commas always go inside quotation marks. That's simple. That's a basic Bloom's taxonomy knowledge level that you need to know. Every time you use quotation marks, every time you use periods, they always go inside quotation marks. Please don't get that wrong. The last one is with full dates. We've already talked about this, but it's just reiterating this point. When you have a full date, including the month, date, and the year, you put a comma after the year also. All right. Okay, now we're going to the textbook. Pause me if you need to, but I'm going right in there with missing or misused hyphens and a compound modifier. That's number 11. This is in the back of your book under the appendix. Take me a minute to find it. It's on page 494 for me. And this, again, talks about missing or misused hyphens and a compound modifier. A compound modifier is two or more words that are used to modify a noun. So we use single words all the time. The tall man went shopping. But if you add more than one word to describe that man, then you have a compound modifier. The too tall man went shopping. And too and tall become hyphenated. You bring them together. And so they give you some examples. The words over the top are three words describing performance. Since it's more than one word, you have to fuse those words together. And so the correct version shows the hyphenated words. And they give a couple other examples. Sometimes you might think it should be hyphenated, but in the case of the second sentence, but freshly is an adverb describing printed. It's not an adjective attached to the noun. Okay. One special one to add, this is one you need to get in your notes, the words every day. Sometimes every day is two words, sometimes every day is one word, and it's because sometimes it's a compound modifier. So if I have a sentence where I say, she went to school every day, that's two words. It's two words. But if I say her everyday activities include yoga, then every day becomes not hyphenated, but it becomes fused into one word, okay? You will see this all over the place. The words everyday being misused. I'm telling you, you'll see it everywhere. On menus, on signs, on advertisements, but it's everyday, two words when it's not being a compound modifier. Okay. Isn't this exciting? Are you having a great time? Me too. The next one is lack of agreement between pronoun and antecedent. This is a huge one. Huge one. Other than commas, this is number one on my list of what drives me nuts when I see it wrong. So I'm letting you know. It's just a pet peeve of mine. This is number 14 on the list. Lack of agreement between pronoun and antecedent. So many students get this wrong. Don't be that student. Pronouns must agree in number. It's called and if it doesn't, it's called a shift in construction. So if your pronoun, or if your subject is singular, then your pronoun needs to be singular. Most of the time, it's really easy, right? The boy um, threw his baseball. His matches the boy. Simple. Or the rowers um, crashed their rowboat. Rowers is plural. There is plural. Simple. The problem is when you have these nouns that are collective nouns. And so if you look at the example in your book, it says the class meets on Thursdays to check their work. Now, it sounds like that is what it should be because class means more than one person. There's 20 people in our class, but class is a singular subject, and I can prove it. The class is here today. Is a singular verb, so that means class is a singular noun. He is, she is, the class, or it is. And so the correct version would mean the class meets on Thursdays to check its work. They give you a better way to correct it because a lot of times when you use that singular pronoun with a noun where people feel that it's plural, it sounds weird. It sounds kind of strange to say the class meets on Thursdays to check its work. And in fact, you'll get some people who say, it's work. I thought you go to college, don't you know? Then you got to explain it. Well, the fact, and then you sound like me, and people will be bored with you and think you're a snob. So at times, well, you can break the rules all you want in casual conversation. If I'm talking with folks, I would say, oh, my class, they have so much fun when I talk about punctuation. I'll say they, even though my brain is screaming at me. It's not they. So they show you a correct version. Class members meet on Thursdays to check their work. I've never met a student who uses a plural subject. You then use a singular pronoun to refer to the plural subject. It's always the other way around. A singular subject, and then students use the plural pronoun. Other words, and these are words you'll want to write down that should send off bells and whistles in your brain when you hear them. Words like team. The team is singular. The team won its game, not their game, its game. Miami University is a singular subject. So we would say Miami, the Miami University had its lawns mowed yesterday. It's not theirs. It's got to be its because Miami is singular. And again, I can prove it because if I use it in a sentence with a verb, I would say Miami University is a school in Oxford. Singular subject, singular verb, so pronouns have to match. So you have words like team, fraternity, sorority. Those are all groups, but they're all singular, collective nouns. Family, government. Um, you can find a list online. Just type collective nouns, and you'll see a whole big list of words that are singular, even though they are comprised of more than one person. All right, so check that. If that confuses you, get somebody on your writing team in the editing stage who understands collective nouns and can catch every single one of them. All right, moving on. The next one is bias language. That's number 15. We have evolved. Thank good Lord, we've evolved in our writing. Everything used to be the male, masculine pronouns. We used to say, a worker should always do his best. We excluded women. We didn't even, we're like, women, come on. Luckily, we're past that, and we now add the or her part. So we would say a worker should always do his or her best. So yay for the women. Of course, that can get to be very convoluted when you use his or her. So the best way to take care of that is to make it plural. The best workers should always do their best. All right, workers plural, their plural. It's not so bad that way. So the good news is we're moving along. We've gotten rid of fireman, it's now firefighter, or mailman, it's now letter carrier. All this is good progress. It's very good. It's inclusive language. And so they give you some language where you want to stay away from. Also, we're moving also, thank goodness, to people first language. When you are referring to someone who has a disability or someone who you might be referring to someone's lifestyle choices or something like that, you always want to put the whatever it is after the person's name. So you want to say, um, you don't want to say the deaf person walk down the street. You want to say the person who is deaf walk down the street. We don't want to define people by their disability. We don't want to say the transgender student went to college. We want to say the student who is transgender went to college. When you put that label in front of that person, then you are saying that's pretty much all that person is. So try to remember that. People first language. The next one is lack of agreement between subject and verb. That's number 16. Look at that, we're almost finished. Most of you do pretty well with this. The problem is when you get the subject and the verb far apart from each other. That's the danger zone. Because as soon as you separate the subject and the verb, first of all, it makes it a tougher sentence to read. But secondly, usually you split up that subject and verb with a prepositional phrase. And if the prepositional phrase ends with a plural, then you might mess up your verb. They give you a good example. The bag with the green stripes belonged to her. And the problem there is stripes is plural, and that is the word that's next to the verb. And so we would say the stripes belong. That makes sense. But the problem is the subject is bag. And so you have to match the subject, which is bag, with the verb. So it's singular, so the bag belongs to her. They give you some other examples there too, including the last one, where if you have a singular and a plural, then you match whichever one is the closest to the verb. All right, so there's the list. Underneath that, I have some practice that I would like for you to do. There's a number of sentences that have errors based on what I just went through. So what I'm going to have you do is pause me and go through those, try to fix them. Do that red strike through or add things. You might have to add commas, you might have to delete commas, you might have to fix pronoun antecedent agreement, any of the ones that are listed up there. So pause me and work on it, and then underneath those sentences are the answers. And I'm just going to keep talking, but I'm going to go to the answers and explain what the fix was. So some of you may think that you don't need this. I'm going to tell you, I can almost guarantee you that you do. So I'm not going to grade you on doing this, but I suggest you go through these sentences, pause me, and then I'll go through the answers. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one of these sentences. I'll give the answers below. The first one initially read, Miami University is preparing to implement their new academic standards. Miami University is singular. We've proven that. And you see it right there. Miami University is. So because it's singular, the pronoun has to match it in number. So it has to be its. Please get that correct with Miami. Please, when you refer to Miami. The next one, to graduate on time, students must come to class, consult with their professors, and study the material. This is an Oxford comma. I would argue that you don't need it there. The list of 3 things is fairly long, but it's pretty clear to me, and so no comma there. Third one, walking uptown and seeing the bar already packed, the fraternity realized their date party was actually the next night. Couple errors with this one. You've got the introductory phrase. So this writer has pulled the end of the sentence up to the front. The subject is the fraternity, and so a traditional sentence it would be the fraternity realized. But because you have that end pulled up, you have to have a comma after that introductory phrase. And then fraternity is singular, so you have to match fraternity with a singular pronoun. Third sentence, after drinking at Brick Street, the students stumbled home. That is that introductory phrase again, and so you have a comma after street. The next one, Junior Brian May was up late last night doing homework. This is a simple one. Read it out loud. If you read it out loud, no commas before or after Brian May. You wouldn't say Junior Brian May was up. Nobody talks like that. You would just say Junior Brian May was up late, so no commas. The next one, Shelley Marks started crying when she realized her favorite basketball team was going to lose their tournament game. There is a plural referencing a team. Team is singular, so you have to make the um, pronoun singular. It's. Next one, a huge group of Miami University seniors are going uptown for Green Beer Day and will drink at several bars. Two errors in this one. Group is the subject, not seniors, because of Miami University seniors is a prepositional phrase getting in the way of the subject and the verb. So a huge group is going uptown. And then no comma after Green Beer Day, because while you do have a sentence before the conjunction, there's no sentence after. The next one, usually a student will enjoy, and then we've got the problem with there, which is plural, referencing the word student, which is singular. Can't do that. Got to make it singular. So I fix it by making it the pronoun singular. Usually a student will enjoy his or her class when he or she feels like he or she is learning something useful. That's a horrible sentence. And the easiest way to make that sentence more crisp and concise is to make the subject plural. Usually students will enjoy their classes when they feel like they're learning something useful. I highly recommend anytime that you're using a singular subject, can you change it to plural? And if you can, do it. It always makes it better. Also notice the comma after usually. It's an introductory phrase. I want to see a comma always. Next one. Senior Angie Zetzer has been working on her cover letter. Angie Zetzer is my first girlfriend ever. 4th grade. We got married on the playground. No comma between senior and Angie, and that's another one. Read it out loud. Some of you put that comma there every time. You wouldn't read this as senior. Angie Zetzer has been working on it. That's not how you would read it. You would read senior Angie Zetzer, no comma. Next one. One thing's for sure, the Cleveland Browns don't look like they're headed to the Super Bowl this year. Thank God. That is a simple fix. Remember, after a colon, if it's a proper noun or a full sentence, you capitalize the first word after. Next one. When one studies well, they usually get good grades. Yeah, remember, don't use one. That's out. I change it to when a student. So now at least I've gotten rid of the fancy schmancy pronoun one, but I've got that he or she, and it's messy. I don't like it. So when students study well, they usually get good grades. That's just so much better. The next sentence, the Miami University freshman started leaving for class, but she decided to skip it. There you have two sentences combined with a conjunction in the middle. So you have to have a comma before the word but. The next one, students from Oxford, Ohio have returned to campus from the fall break. You have to have a comma after the state. I need another break, freshman Suzanne Karshuk said. You have to have a comma before the attribution. So even though I need another break as a sentence, the full sentence doesn't end until after the attribution. Notice, by the way, that the subject comes before the verb said. As a general rule, that's pretty much how you should always do it. The person's name or he or she, and then the word said. Last one. I can't wait, said Chrissy Radcliffe for spring break. This is a situation where I've interrupted the quote, and so you have a comma after I can't wait because you still need the attribution, and but the sentence isn't finished yet. And this is a way to increase the drama for the quotation by cutting it up. Readers want to know what she can't wait for, in this case for spring break. And so you need a comma after her name instead of a period because the sentence doesn't end until the end. Right, there you go. There's some sources down there. I like Purdue's OWL website. I like Grammar Girl. Grammarly is fantastic. They have a handbook there at that link to help guide you through some more examples and for more clarity. So I go pretty fast with this because number one, there are a number of you who are good at most of these things, and also there's just so much more help out there for you that you can do that on your own. So this is the knowledge and comprehension level of Bloom's. I'm expecting you know and understand these things. If you don't, if you know you struggle with these things, and some of you do greatly, you've got to get extra help. This is college, and college demands that you've got to put in that extra effort because I'm going to want to see that you can apply these things in your writing. Everything is fair game from now on. Everything you write, everything. including your observation forms. If you have Oxford commas, or you don't put commas before introductory clauses and phrases, or you don't agree with pronoun use in Miami University, or you have trouble with your compound modifiers, it's all fair game for me. So you can write great things, but if you are getting these things wrong, then not good. So study them. Uh, if you have any questions, I could talk about this all day. I mean, gosh, I've already talked about it for long enough. So anyway, all right. So thanks, appreciate it, and be in touch with me, please, if you're struggling.